Today I'm going to be giving you guys some tips and tricks on how to play Hytale, which is the brand new fantasy RPG version of Minecraft. So if you guys are looking forward to it, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future Hytale videos. And let's go ahead and jump right in. The first thing you're going to want to do when you launch Hytale is create your world. Now currently there is only exploration or creative. I personally would recommend going with exploration for your first world. I know a lot of people would suggest creative so that you can really get a feel for everything, but I think that creative is really going to spoil you to some of the really cool furniture items that you're going to unlock later on. So I think personally starting with exploration is the best option. My number one tip and trick for Hytale is when you're in these settings for your survival world, which is what exploration is. If you guys play Minecraft, you know that Minecraft has a hardcore survival adventure creative mode. Now, when you're in your settings for the exploration world, or otherwise known in Minecraft as survival, the first thing you're going to do is name your world. So for instance, for this world, I'm going to name it testing world, and then you can check PvP if you want, if you're playing this in a multiplayer save. Personally, I leave that unchecked because I don't have any multiplayer saves right now, but if I did, I would definitely leave this checked just for optimum chaos. Fall damage I personally leave turned on just to add a bit of realism to the game, and the day-night cycle I leave on ×1 speed because anything else either goes a little too fast or a little too slow for me. Although if you wanted to play a sort of hardcore survival version in Hytale, you could definitely switch this to being ×2 speed, and then on the inventory penalty on death, you could put drop all to really give yourself a challenge. Personally, I do drop all anyway, just because that reminds me the most of Minecraft, because in Minecraft, as you guys know, you drop your entire inventory at death, but I will say that in Hytale it works a little bit differently, so you can just straight up lose some of your resources that are in your inventory, which you can determine on partial drop with the percentage bar here. So for instance, if you wanted to play partial drop but kind of easy mode, you could turn the resource and durability loss percent down to 0. That way you just dropped the items but you didn't lose any of them at all. But if you do leave it on 50% where the default is, or even do drop all, then you're going to lose some durability on your items and possibly some of your items themselves, which I think personally gives you a little bit of an extra challenge. But if you guys don't want that, again, you could always go with none instead of partial drop and then turning it all the way down. So there's really an option for everyone with this. But make sure to hit apply settings when you're done changing the settings around for your world. That way they will be saved for when you play in your world. Alright, so when you start off in Hytale, you start off in this abandoned temple, and my second tip for Hytale is to go around the temple and use your F key, if you haven't changed any of your keybinds, to pick up all of the resources that are inside of the temple, because there is some rubble laying around, and you will need that to do some crafting later on when you get into the game. There's also some mushrooms which you might want to gather depending on your play style as well, and with that, let's go ahead and head out into the world. Now each world in Hytale is randomly spawned outside of this auto-generated spawn point structure, so each and every one of your worlds are probably going to look vastly different. For instance, I have another save game which I've been streaming on YouTube, and it starts off in a completely different biome to the one that I'm currently in. So another tip that I have for Hytale, which is tip number 3, is to pick up every single resource that you see on the ground. So that includes stone rubble of any kind, and of course piles of sticks. You're really going to need a ton of resources early on, and the one thing you're really going to want to do is just harvest and pick up every single thing you come across. As with any sandbox RPG, my fourth tip is to do what all Minecrafters do when they first spawn into a world, which is punch a tree. So punching a tree is something that almost every Minecraft player has done at some point or another, but it applies well to high Hytale as well. So there's a lot of different kinds of tree types in Hytale, which you guys will probably find pretty early on into your adventure with Hytale, because honestly, they're everywhere in the world, not necessarily in specific biomes like in Minecraft. Now, personally, when I'm looking for a tree to punch, I want to start with one that's kind of smaller. So in Hytale, there is a gravity system. So if you punch out the bottom bark block of any tree, the entire tree is going to come down in one hit, like so, which honestly is super satisfying. It's something that Minecraft players have been asking for the entire time that the game's been out, because honestly it's just really unrealistic that the trees don't come down from gravity. But in Hytale, we also have the added bonus of logs that go into the ground, similar to an IRL root system. The logs don't go out into an entire root system because it would take you ages to get just one tree done, but you do need to make sure to get the bottom pieces of log if you want an extra bit of wood. Now you might be wondering, how are you going to get out of this hole? And for my next tip and trick for Hytale, I'm going to tell you something that's actually super important, because as someone that played a lot of Minecraft, I didn't think this was going to be possible. So in Hytale, all you have to do is run up to the wall that you want to climb and hold W and then press spacebar to jump, and then your character is going to be able to pull themselves out of pretty much any hole. I personally haven't found the exact height limit for how tall your Hytale character can reach, but I'm assuming the limit is somewhere around 4 or 5 blocks if I had to guess. Also, as a bonus tip, if you do dig out the logs that are the roots of the tree, I personally recommend getting a piece of dirt and covering up the hole afterwards, just so that after you dig down that tree, you're not going to accidentally be running by at some point and accidentally fall into the hole and hurt yourself if it's pretty deep. So once you feel that you have gathered enough resources, it's probably time for you to make yourself a starter base. Now, personally in Hytale, I like to find a pre-built structure to live in, because I don't really love the idea of digging into a mountain like I do in Minecraft, but you could certainly do that if that was something that you wanted to do. Although I will say, if you're picking a structure to live in, you need to make sure it's not one that has an enemy in it. So for instance, if you see anything that looks like that, you definitely don't want to live by it, because those will try to kill you. And when you don't have any weaponry, you definitely don't want to be taking on any of those. Another tip that I have, specifically for when you're picking out your starter base location, is you need to look at the little bar at the top of your screen and look for where it says directionally the spawn point is, because before you get yourself a bed, your spawn point is going to be the original spawn point symbol, so you don't want to live too far from that at the start until you get yourself a bed, at which point you can live as far away as you want. But personally at the start, just in case you're dying and you don't want your items that you drop to despawn, you're going to want to live pretty close to your spawn point. So the next thing you're going to want to do in Hytale, once you've chosen your starter base location, the first thing you're going to want to do is press tab to open up your inventory and basic crafting station. So the first thing you're going to want to craft is probably going to be a crude sword, because honestly you're going to need some sort of weapon. So the crude sword recipe is any rubble, some plant fiber, and some sticks, which you'll probably already have on you, but if you don't, you can probably find some pretty easily. The crude hatchet, which you're also going to want so you can tear down trees more easily, requires any rubble, plant fiber, and some sticks. All of these original recipes require the same amount of rubble, plant fiber, and sticks, which is 2 for each. So altogether, you're going to want at least 6 sticks, 6 plant fibers, and 6 kinds of rubble, so that you can craft your original tools. So now that you have your original sword, pickaxe, and axe crafted, you're going to want to put them into your hotbar here so that you can access them easily. You can put them in whatever order you want. Personally, I like putting my sword in the first slot, and then my pickaxe, and then my axe. But that's just my personal preference. Everyone has their own preference. The next thing you're going to want to craft is a campfire, so that you're going to be able to cook some food, among other things. The campfire recipe requires 4 sticks and 2 rubble. To place your campfire, you're going to want to scroll to wherever it is in your hotbar and simply right-click to place it down on the ground. Now that you have your basic starter tools, the next thing you're going to want to do is gather some resources. So for me, since I'm living in a cave, it's pretty easy for me to gather a couple different types of stone. But for you, you may have to go out and find like a hill structure or even just some boulders on the ground to dig up some cobblestone and the like. Once you've gathered enough stone, my next tip is to craft your first benches. So the first thing you're probably going to want to craft is a workbench, because that's going to be the most useful bench for you in the game. It only requires 4 of any tree log and 3 of any stone to craft your first workbench. If you have enough resources for a bonus tip, I recommend building a builder's workbench as well, because it only requires 6 tree logs and 3 stone, and it'll give you a lot of very useful recipes, especially for early game. Once you place your workbenches down, you're going to press F to open up either of them. The first thing that I'm going to do though, and my next tip for you guys, is to open up the builder's workbench, and put a log of wood into it. So that is going to open up this menu where you can see tons of different crafting recipes for your wood, including different types of planks. The first thing you're going to want to make with your wood from this menu is a crude door for your house, which does require 2 of any wood type's logs. So then you're going to craft the door and place it down wherever your entrance to your house is. For me, it's right beside my benches. If you happen to have any windows in your house, by the way, you can also craft some crude windows with 1 log. That will make you 2 windows per log that you use. So I can craft 3 from the logs that I put into it, which gives me 6 windows, which makes a cute little window to look out over the mountaintops with. The next thing that you're going to want to make as it approaches nighttime is your first set of torches. So crude torches take 1 plant fiber, 1 tree sap, and 1 stick. So I'm going to craft 10 of these, which will make 40 torches, because you're going to need a lot of torches in this game for your houses and for mining. My next tip for you guys, which relates to the torches, is to start placing them in your house so that it's well lit. Personally, I like to place 1 torch in every kind of dark cranny in my house. So for a house in a cove like this, I would place 2 at the back, 1 by my front door, and then 1 in the hallway-ish area. For you to determine how many torches your house needs, just take your torch out of your hotbar and scroll to something else in your hotbar and see if your house is well lit enough. There shouldn't be any dark corners in your house if you're going for optimum coziness. For instance, right here, I'm noticing that it is a little bit dim, so I'm going to put another torch right about here, just to add a little bit of extra light. And that should be enough, I think, for my little abode, but your abode might need a bit more depending on where you're living. My next tip and trick is to build a furnace, because the first thing that you're going to want in your house other than workbenches is definitely a furnace. This is going to be able to smelt down all of the ores that you get in the mines into bars, which is going to be super useful later on. It takes 6 of any tree log and 6 of any stone, and once you've crafted it, you can place it anywhere in your house. My next tip and trick, which is actually my final one, is to make yourself some extra tools before you go mining. So the last thing you want is to end up in the mines without enough pickaxes. My tip and trick is to craft at least 2 extra pickaxes from the one you have in your hotbar, because the durability is only 150 on the crude pickaxes, and you're probably going to be down there for a while gathering tons of resources, and you don't want to have to be running up for more pickaxe supplies. As a bonus tip and trick before you go mining, you're probably going to want to make yourself your first wooden chest and place it down somewhere in your home, and then dump off all of your resources into that, because you don't want to lose any of that if you're down in the mines and you accidentally die, especially if you're playing with drop all on. The only thing you're going to want to keep in your inventory is your sword and your pickaxes, maybe your hatchet as well, depending on what you find in the mines, some torches, and of course some food to restore some health, and also possibly some stamina depending on what types of food that you have in your inventory. So a bonus tip for Hytale is, if you want your character to be cute and look exactly like you, like my character does for me, then the first thing you're going to want to do when you launch Hytale is you're going to want to go to the My Avatar screen, where you're going to be able to customize your avatar almost completely. I would say there's only a few things customization wise that they haven't really added to the game, but they have tons of different categories for the head and for clothes, And they do have some different face accessories as well, like glasses for people like me that wear them. And they also have a few really cute clothing accessories, so be sure to look through all of the tabs when you're customizing your character. That way you can get the best character design possible for you. You can even design your character to be a little bit more fantasy themed, because in the customization screen, they do actually have a few different things that could help you be a little bit more of a fantasy themed character. If you wanted to make your character look a little bit more fantasy themed, like an elf or an ogre for instance, then be sure to check out the general section with the ears, because they have a couple different options for elf ears and then even one option for ogre ears, with I'm sure plans to add more options in the future. Personally, I went with the default ears for my character because I wasn't really going with a fantasy theme for this character, but you guys could definitely do whatever you want. And I personally do love the elf ears and the large elf ears. I think they're super cute and they look super good in this pixel art style. Those are all of my tips and tricks for starting off in Hytale, but my next video is going to be all of my tips and tricks for mining in Hytale, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below if you guys want to see that video, and comment any questions that you have about Hytale down below as well, and I will try to get back to you on them as quickly as possible to help you out with your Hytale journey. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!